It's your boy, what's the words?
I gotta say what's up to my y'all Smooth Vega.
Tuned into the Smooth Vega podcast.
The podcast bitches.
And welcome back to the Smooth Vega podcast. Look, it's been a minute. So glad to be back. If you're listening on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, make sure to click follow, hit 5 stars, leave a review. You already know the routine, and pass it along. Let everybody know. And with that being said, I am honored and excited to introduce my next guest. I have a long-standing history with this man. And look, no exaggeration, once upon a time, sometime like I would say 2006 maybe, I stood in line for almost 2 hours at an autograph session to meet him. Years later, as many of you guys know, I have a very established history as a promoter. But my very first show that I ever booked with a national recording artist was actually with my next guest. He is a multi-platinum recording artist, and quite frankly, one of my favorite artists to ever do it. I am joined here by none other than Frankie J.
What's up?
How are you doing, Frankie?
That was an awesome introduction, dude. That was an awesome introduction.
You know, I never plan these things, dude. I just wing them on the spot. But it was cool because it's you, you know, and obviously I've known you for a long time, like I mentioned. Yeah. And, you know, I don't want this to be the conventional, like, how'd you get started singing? How did you come up with your name? You know, I want this to be like a little bit of history, but at the same time, I want to get your perspective. And,
for sure.
And I want to give you your just due because there's so much there. But before I go any further, I like the t-shirt.
Oh, thanks, dude. Oh, you know, bro, I'm a big Selena fan, dude. I love this woman. She's amazing. Great singer and just an all-time, all-around, you know, artist that opened doors for me and for many others. You know? Icon for sure. Yeah. And we're gonna get to the record "See When I Vest" because I know that you did a rendition of that record. You did a version of that record with Playing Skills. I want to get to that in a second, but before I go any further, I want to say that, you know, this is unfiltered, uncensored stuff here. Let's make it interesting.
This industry is very interesting because I just mentioned right now that, you know, once upon a time I was a fan that stood in line for hours at an autograph session to meet you. Then years later, I decided to jump into being a promoter, which obviously that's what I'm still doing to this day.
Right.
And I've evolved in different roles, but, you know, you were the first artist that I ever booked. And let's be honest, man, like, you know, I'm not trying to sugarcoat it whatsoever. Yeah. This industry is filled with a lot of dickheads, a lot of assholes, and a lot of people that, you know, I would say early on.
Facts.
I would say pretty early on in my career, you know, I got treated bad by a lot of people, and, you know, I don't. Right. I understand it's kind of, you know.
Yeah, you don't have any ill will towards them, but yeah, I totally understand you.
It's funny you say that, right? Actually,
you see what happened was
no, it's because, you know, I always chalked it up to paying dues, right? Like, oh, okay, I'm paying dues early on, but as you know, obviously, I've been working with Louis the singer since he was a kid, and
that's right, man.
And so I remember, you know, whenever. 2007, I think actually the first time I met you, he was right next to me, and at that time you were like his favorite singer, right? You were like the guy that kind of inspired him to get into music, and you were always good to him. But years later, in 2009, whenever we recorded his first real song, it was me, you, and Jose Melendez. And
wow.
And we were driving back to the airport, and I played you the song. And when I played you the song, you did
I like it? Did I say anything
you know
about
what?
it?
You actually said it was good, and you did a video drop, and you shouted him out. But it did wonders for him, you know, at that time, for him to see someone that he looked up to and someone that he respected, give him that credit. But I say that to say, when I say the people in the industry there's a lot of people that weren't good to us, you know.
I see what you're saying.
And like there was a lot of people.
I know where you're going. Yeah.
There was a lot of people that were assholes to not only me and Louis, and now that are coming back around years later, that he's starting to circulate and he's starting to really do his thing right now. There's people that were really fucking bad to us that are coming around trying to do business with us. But I say that to say you were one of the few people that has always been consistently not only good to myself, to him, but to people in general. So I got to give you credit on that, man.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you.
You know,
I mean, I've always been a good person. All you know, I feel to everybody that I've met. I don't think I've ever been a jerk to anyone. I've always believed that whenever you meet somebody, not only in the industry, but in anything, anywhere, genuinely, it just comes out of me. Being nice and being humble, because that's the kind of home that I was raised in. Everything starts at home.
Yeah.
My father, my mother, always taught us to be kind to people. They were never ever that way, rude or hateful, or jerks to anybody, for lack of better words. But they were always very genuine when it comes to teaching us the morals and how to be with people in the outside world. So meeting people from from high places and humble places at the same time, like, you treat them the same.
Yeah.
And that's how you're supposed to be in this world. There's no other way that you should be.
I wish everybody was like you, and I wish everybody had the same mindset that you did, because it's not like that, right? Like, the industry has a tendency to be. And
there's people that have egos, and they're very prideful, and they're like, "Who are you? What do you, whatever." But I've always been the type of person to shake hands with everybody and to look them straight in the eye, and say, "Hey, man, nice to meet you. Good luck with everything that you're doing and all your endeavors, man. Best wishes."
And it's so interesting because I said in 2008, when I started my talent buying career, you were actually the first artist that I ever booked.
Yeah, and this was 2008. Yeah, you're right.
This is now 15 years ago, right? So here we are, 15 years later. Your son's in the building. I don't know how old was he back then. He was probably like...
Well, this was 2008. He was 3.
He was 3 years old, and now he's a grown-ass man.
No. 2000. No, what am I saying? He was 8 years old. He was 7 years old. He was already 7 years old. No, I'm thinking about my daughter. My daughter was born in 2005. Frankie was born in 2000. So, yeah, he probably would have been
he was a little
7,
boy, and now he's a man,
close to 8.
in the building with us today. But, I say that to say, it's so interesting because for those that don't know, which obviously the public doesn't know, but I shared this on Clubhouse one time. The first time that I booked you, I was green as grass. Never done it in my life.
You had no idea if I was going to sell tickets or if I was going to do any.
And it's so funny because I got hustled by the guy that sold me the show.
Oh, that's right.
It was a guy by the name that didn't deserve any credit whatsoever.
There you go, yeah.
And man, I don't know
Shame
how.
on him, man.
He got me for a few grand. But you were courteous enough to get on the phone with me the night before, and we had already booked your flight, and you took a chance on me, and you said, "Look, man, I don't normally do this. I don't get on the phone with the buyer. I don't do this, but I don't want to see you get taken advantage of." And you agreed to jump on that flight, and you came in, and as soon as you landed, we did right by you. We gave you the money, and you sold out 2 shows for me that night, which I should have profited more money had I not got hustled.
No, of course.
But but you did that, and I'll never forget that, and I'm always grateful for that because, look, I don't know where I would have been had that collapsed.
For sure.
So, thank you, man. Thank you for doing that, man. You know what I'm saying? And here we are years later on the podcast. We've done several shows with each other, and I'm extremely proud of everything that you've done and continue to do.
I believe that when you do right to people, it comes right back to you, and vice versa. If you do bad to people, it's something that you reap what you sow. And man, I think it's always good to just to do the right thing. And sometimes in the industry it's very hard to trust.
Oh, absolutely.
It's very, very hard to trust. But I think even in that time I was going through a certain walk, at the moment during those years. Yeah. And I was just trying to do the right thing in everything that I was doing when it came down to my career and the business. And man, it worked out.
Here we are, man. And so I want to transition that into a subject that me and you have had conversations about, but I would love for people that are watching to kind of have a more broader understanding of, which is the hardships that you experienced as a Mexican American, recording artist. Specifically you doing R&B music. Obviously, it goes without saying, multi-platinum recording artist. You've been nominated for multiple Grammys. You've actually won Grammys. So, and obviously, strong songwriter. It goes on. It goes without saying. I don't even need to give you the rap sheet. But you being a Mexican American R&B singer at a time where let's be honest, man. You were kind of one of the first of your kind, right? If not the first. And what are some of the hardships that you experienced being, you know, a brown R&B singer, man?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like San Diego, California.
It was tough, man. It wasn't easy. And, I want to add that there were a few acts that came first with being Latino and doing some R&B. New Flavor.
Oh, yeah, New Flavor.
New Flavor had come in, and they had some success with Heaven.
I love that song.
And they had another song called Sweet Sexy Thing. Even before New Flavor, there was a group called the Barrio Boys.
Oh, I remember the Barrio Boys.
The Barrio Boys attempted to do the R&B thing, but even they struggled. The album did not have success. And soon after that, I think their project ended up crumbling. And I know this firsthand because I know some of the guys. They're friends of mine. I've met all of them. I've met all of them. And they've kind of given me some stories. And they actually had also some stories to share with me because of them being Latino doing R&B. But with that said, not many of us have been successful in the R&B realm. Another group that came in also in the picture was a group called Voices of Theory.
Well, I remember those
Voices
guys.
of Theory had a song called Say It, and they had some success. Their first album sold, I believe it went gold. We were it's funny, man, because we were actual label mates at one point. They were signed to a label called Ola Recordings, home of Latino artists.
Oh, wow.
I was signed when I was 18 years old to that record label. This was in 96.
Wow.
And so I saw that growing up as a kid, and it inspired me. Another kid, well, now he's a grown man, Bobby Ross Avila, that also was a little kid back then doing pop R&B music. He was opening up for New Kids on the Block way back in the days. Now he was taken under the wing of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, but now Bobby's writing and producing for Usher, Shaka Khan, I mean, you name it, some of the greatest artists of today's age. And but they did not continue as artists, right?
Gotcha.
So when I came into the picture, all of that I had seen already. And in my time, when I came out as an R&B artist, it wasn't really a thing.
Yeah.
So when I started doing, R&B music, pop R&B, and I came out with Don't Wanna Try, I remember that song was just everywhere on the radio stations, everywhere, man. I could not go anywhere, and that song was not being played on the radio. And for me, being Mexicano, singing R&B, pop R&B music, I felt so proud because a lot of people doubted me. Yeah. When I left the group, the Kumbia Kings, because obviously y'all know I was part of that group. When I left the group, people did not know where I was going to go. If I was going to go straight to Kumbia, if I was going to stay in Spanish music, or if I was going to venture off into doing who knows what.
Yeah.
When I told everybody that I was going to do pop R&B music, they were like, man, don't do it. Not too many of us are out there doing that. You're not going to succeed. And I would just tell you to go with what you already know, which is Spanish, do cumbia. I'm not going to mention names, but they said that to me. And I said, no. I go, watch me. I'm going to do it. Whether you doubt it, whether you doubt me or not, I said, I'm going to do it. And when I got signed at 25 years old, man, I got signed to Columbia for $1 million. And I saw that there was a gap right there just waiting for me to fill it. I just grabbed the bull by the horns, man, and I just went. I went at it, and I produced a whole entire album with a very good friend of mine named James Galvez, we've been friends since high school. And Andy Quinn, who's my guitarist, was also part of that whole entire journey. And they saw everything that we were doing, how we were putting it all together. They gave me 30 days to finish one full album. 30 days.
Wow.
And I was writing the songs. Luckily, I already had about 6 or 7 songs written, but the production still needed some, some more, I guess detailed in the production and the way that we were going to put together the whole project. But soon after that, I wrote like 4 or 5 more songs, and then we finished the whole entire album. We did 12 songs. And but the first one being Don't Want to Try, it just kind of took off. And soon after that, there's another song that came out called Sugar Sugar.
Yeah.
Right? So then when Sugar Sugar came out, it was soon after, like maybe 6 months after Don't Want to Try. I had already an established name, and I had already been traveling, all over the United States, and going to Canada and promoting Don't Want to Try. So when Sugar Sugar came in, it's funny because that record was supposed to be my second single.
Yeah.
And when we showed it to Kumbia said, "Nah, this song does not sound good for Frankie." So of course, Charles, my manager at the time, asked me, he goes, "Hey man, I don't know what to do with this record." And he goes, "Should we just have Bash take it and I can get him signed to Universal? And you are already with Kumbia, with Sony. And now if I was to manage him as well, then we could do some big things together." And I said, "Let him have it. Get him signed to Universal, and let's go." I said, at the end of the day, I wrote it with him. Yeah. So no matter what, at the end of the day, I win. We both win. We all win. And when Kumbia found out that Ronnie had gotten signed with Universal,
Yeah.
they were like, "Oh shit. Okay, so they're gonna push the record." And then soon after that, the record only took. Bash went on a promotional tour with me. I took him with me on a promo run for like about, I think it was a week or so. And I started doing shows, obviously still promoting Don't Want to Try, still doing shows with Don't Want to Try, and We Still, which was my second single off the What's a Man to Do album. And we were performing Sugar Sugar together. Nobody knew the record, but it started to blow up soon after that. And man, the rest is history. And Kumbia was kicking themselves in the ass soon after. So that's when Obsession came. It was after all that, that run of Don't Want to Try and Sugar Sugar. And man, I was looking at royalty checks like crazy. They were coming in. And it was an amazing freaking experience.
Well, and you mentioned, having, pride whenever you heard Don't Want to Try. I think for me, and for a lot of people like myself, I grew up listening to R&B music. I'm actually an R&B fan before anything else.
Right.
So, Voices of Theory, New Flavor, I know all of those groups.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, I remember once upon a time, remember All For One?
Of course.
I used to think that All For One, because there was 2 light skins in the group. I was like, they're Latinos. The guy with the mustache, he's Mexican. I know he is.
Yeah,
so
he's gotta be.
So I adopted them guys as some of my faves. But hearing your record, Don't Want to Try, it was definitely for me an exciting time to see someone represent us and do it in that way that you did. And I dedicated that song to a lot of girls. Back in the day. Yeah, dude.
Did you get lucky?
I got lucky. I even dropped a little verse on one of those, and I gave it to a girl on a mixtape. You know what I mean? But what's so cool about that is like you mentioned. You and Bash.
Yeah.
You guys.
That was the start of our relationship.
I mean,
as
here
brothers,
you are,
man.
20 plus years later, you guys are still doing shows together. You guys are. I was kind of telling this to Bash recently. I was like, I don't feel like our culture has a lot of like legacy acts in terms of the on the American side, on the Mexican American side. And I go, and you guys are really kind of the first of that kind, because I go, if you noticed, maybe 2010 to like 15, it was a kind of a weird time, and the internet was coming in, and it was starting to become more and more of a thing. Social media came in and started becoming more and more of a thing, but the pay for the artist wasn't as high as it is now. It's actually interesting because some of you guys are making more money today than you were in 2015.
Right.
And it's only because now the the appetite for these shows and that feeling, that nostalgic feeling. And it's not to take anything away from the artists, because you guys are still producing new music,
For
but
sure.
those hits are freaking timeless, dude. Like,
Yeah.
people love those songs. Like, Sugar Sugar just recently went 4 times platinum.
Yeah.
And even as far back as maybe a year ago, it went viral on TikTok again.
Yeah.
Like, it just became a hit all over again.
Yeah.
And I always wonder, like, as big as you guys were in 2001, 2002, I remember seeing you on TRL,
man,
and I remember
MTV.
all that. I saw you guys on MTV. I saw you get punked by Ashton Kutcher, Michael Jackson. Yeah, the Michael Jackson stuff, like all that stuff. Like,
I couldn't believe it, man.
those are all like cultural things that I remember.
Yeah.
But
Cool
man,
moments.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, how different do you think it would have been with a TikTok and an Instagram and
it would have exploded tremendously. Right now, we wouldn't even be able to walk in the street.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how crazy big I think it would have been with all the technology, all these apps and social media networks. I mean, I think back then, if anybody, if they would have had a big record, forget it. It would have been over. I mean, it would have been just like what it is today, like with all these kids that are coming up with, with these hits that are just exploding over TikTok overnight, and they're getting millions and millions of hits, millions of views, and people are getting they're recognizing them out in the street. They can't really go anywhere, and they're making a nice living out of it. I think if we would have had TikTok back then and, the social media world, it would have been a chicken wrap, dude. It would have been a wrap, man. And so, when Don't Wanna Try It came out in 2003, because I wrote that song in 2002. I wrote it when I was in the Kumbia Kings.
It was actually on one of the Kumbia Kings
It was
album.
written exactly.
I remember that.
And we went to court. We had a big old battle. Not a lot of people know about this, but they sued me. The company sued me. Capital EMI sued me, and we went to battle with this whole thing in court. And then they got the chance to have Don't Wanna Try on the album Cuatro.
I remember that.
With Kumbia Kings. And I think I want to say Chris Perez did a solo on the record, and another song that I wrote called Count on Me. He did a solo on that. Those two songs were on the album Cuatro. But it's crazy because we went to court, and then 3 months after that album came out was when What's a Man to Do came out. We were supposed to come out before that, and we would have probably sold a lot more records having it been on the album Cuatro.
You know what? I agree, but I will say this. I remember hearing it on the Kumbia Kings album.
Yeah.
And when I heard it on the album, I liked the song.
Right.
But it felt a little bit overproduced.
But it sounded different.
It was a little overproduced. It had too much. And the version that came out on the album that you had was stripped down.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more stripped down.
It was a lot better.
Which was a lot more
For sure.
impactful. When you talk about the Kumbia Kings, let's just kind of go to the end of your time there when you decided, you know what, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna do R&B pop. This is now the route I'm gonna go. What was the ultimate deciding factor for you to do that? Was it just a matter of
Well, it wasn't me deciding to leave. I got fired.
Oh, I actually why did you get fired, Frankie? I just
fired.
got done doing an introduction about how you're a nice guy. Let me find out you're a party
But
animal.
I wasn't being a jerk, or I wasn't being this hoodlum kid that was just not taking care of his priorities. I wasn't this kid that was just going out there doing crazy things. This was an actual honest excuse, if I may. I think I was traveling back from San Diego back to Texas. And this is how I used to live. I was going back to see my kids all the time. Like, if I wasn't working, I didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
I wanted to be with my kids.
Correct.
And I would always drive. I wasn't making that much money back then. I was making $300-$400 a show.
Gotcha.
So whatever amount of money that I was able to save or have, I would pay my rent. And then the rest I would save it and be like, okay, what can I do? I buy myself some clothes, shoes, whatever. And sometimes I'd be like, you know what? I'm going back to San Diego. I don't have any shows. And I would always call the bosses, which was always AB and Cruz at the time. And I would say, hey, are we doing anything? Are we recording? Are we doing any shows? Nah, you're good for like, 3-4 weeks. So I would just pick up and go, dude. I would drive 20 hours back to San Diego, and I would drive back whenever it was time for me. They would call me and be like, yo, Cisco. That was what they would call me, right? Yeah. Yo, Cisco, we're doing a couple of shows this weekend. Can you make sure you're here? Absolutely. Boom. Hang up the phone. And then the next day I'd be making my way back to Texas. So when I got back to Texas, I got here late. I want to say it was San Antonio. And it was a sold out show, 5,000 people. So when I got back, I missed one song. The guys had already gone on stage. I missed one song, which I think it was Boom Boom. I got on stage after. And right when I got on stage, I was freaking roasted in front of 5,000 people, which I deserved it.
Yeah.
I deserved it because I was
Hold
late.
on. Was he like, stop the show? He's
Yes.
late to the show.
Yes,
This
that's
guy
exactly
finally
what
decided
happened.
to show up. All 5,000 fans. Look
That's
at him.
exactly what happened.
Wow.
As soon as we finished Boom Boom, or they finished Boom Boom because I wasn't on stage yet, I got on stage. And that's when I got roasted. And then right after the show, soon after, like within minutes, man, the fans forgot about that. And we were singing every song. We were singing Desde que no estás aquí. We were singing Te di. We were singing Me enamoré otra vez. We were singing Me estoy muriendo. All our hits. And right after the show was when I got fired.
Like right off?
On the bus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We went on the bus. And yeah, it was to me, it was like, it wasn't as devastating as I thought it would be. I actually felt, because there were some things going on that I think a lot of us were already kind of tired of.
Yeah.
And it was just like the pinnacle of, it was the last straw. And that's what happened, man. And soon after I was fired, I went back to Corpus, and I remember, man, just gathering all my stuff, rented a U-Haul, and I said, all right, guys, I guess I'm fired. I'm leaving. So I left. And then days later, I get a call back from Cruz, and he says, hey, man, he didn't want to fire you. Can you come back? And I was like, what do you want me to do now? There's a lot more.
Yeah,
that
I'm
happened.
sure, and I'm sure a lot of it's probably wrapped up with respect.
There's a lot of stuff that happened.
Well, I think a lot of it's probably respect based.
Yes.
Because I think in the industry, there's a moral that we live by. You got to respect your people. You got to respect your team. And then if your team doesn't feel valued, ultimately they're going to be like, you know what? I don't want to be here no more. But with that being said, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson always says that him being cut by, it
was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Right? It was the best thing that ever happened to him. Him not making the NFL was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Because look at him now.
It's the same thing, right? You being fired in retrospect may have been the best thing that ever happened to you, because then that opens up the pathway for you to go and decide, hey, you know what? I was doing this probably in a lot of ways because, you had, let's be clear, for those that don't know, you were signed prior to even getting to the Kumbia Kings.
Correct.
As Frankie Boy.
As a solo artist.
Frankie Boy was the name, correct? And so you were already doing music as a solo artist. That eventually leads for you to get with the Kumbia Kings.
Yeah.
And then you do your run there. But I think, how old were you at the time?
When I joined the band, I was 21.
21 years old. With all due respect, you're just barely
just
starting to live. You're starting to
Mm-hmm.
live, and at that point, any opportunity seems like an opportunity.
Right.
It might have not been the right fit, but you know what? Let me try it out. Let me go out. Man, you know what? I'm in front of thousands of people. There's fanfare everywhere. So you think that's where you're meant to be, but ultimately, you were meant for more, which is ultimately for you to do.
There was a lot more things that I was thinking about than just being in the group. Obviously, I loved the group. It was my college. I always say it to everybody, it was my university.
Absolutely.
Because I was there for 4 years. I learned about the business. I learned about the stages. I learned about interviews. I learned about radio stations. I learned about tours. It was all like coming to me, and I was just sucking it all up, like, you know, all the knowledge. And I mean, I was in love with being on the road. I loved every second about it, and performing. And not to mention, I was also writing a lot of their records in the English side. And I threw in some ideas here and there on some of the Spanish stuff, but I never got credit for it, which was fine, because I'm like, dude, I'm fine. I'm doing what I love, and I'm already making a little bit of money here to sustain myself. But I learned a lot, and it was time for me to finally make that move. So when I got let go, I was like, it gave me the strength, and the courage to finally say, you know what, I'm gonna have to do this, because there's no other way around this. And I thank it. I thank them, honestly, man. I really do. I thank them for the good, you know, all the good that happened when I was there, and even the bad. I thank them for that too, because that balanced me as who I am now. It made me who I am now, and it gave me that proper balance, you know. And it was a great experience.
Yeah, everything's a learning experience, right? So let's kind of fast forward. You know, you have your run. You mentioned Sugar. You mentioned Don't Want to Try. You mentioned Obsession, right? Obsession. You had like a series of records, just one after another. And then eventually, you know, the end of the decade started dwindling down. Is that whenever you went independent? Or when did you leave the label officially?
I went independent in 2009, I believe.
Yeah, I think that was around the time.
Yeah, it was around 2009. I was still with Kumbia in 2008, towards the end of 2008, beginning of 2009. And this was when the shift started happening with the labels now catering to these artists that they were signing 360 deals with.
Correct.
Because when I got signed to Kumbia, I just got signed for the record deal. They were just getting sales from the records. And I started kind of getting the feeling of, well, they're not really paying attention to me, so I got to do something about it. And I remember having a meeting with Kumbia, asking them, like, hey, man, like, I got records. I got songs. I mean, I was working with the Underdogs. I was working with Clutch, the Clutch. Remember the Clutch? They were writers, man. They had I was working with James Fauntleroy. James Fauntleroy is now an incredible songwriter for so many artists. I was writing songs with them, writing songs with the Avila brothers. I was doing records with, you know, 3-6 Mafia, out of all people.
That. You played that at one of my shows, and the record never came out.
It was crazy. It never came out. I have records that you wouldn't even believe that are just sitting there collecting dust. I have so many great songs, well-written, well-produced records that never got to see the light of day. And I remember showing them to my A&R at Kumbia, and he was like, you know, I don't know. And I remember showing it to even the president of Kumbia at the time. He was a British man, you know, obviously came from London, was now taking over the label. And I remember showing these records to a lot of these guys, the big execs, and not one of them said, you have a hit. So, I mean, I couldn't do anything with those records because obviously, you know, there were also other people involved in them that I couldn't just put them out and be like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and make this money. No. And so, unfortunately, a lot of those records stayed where they're at now, in the back burner. So I had to figure out what to do for myself as an artist and figure out how to, you know, move forward. And that's when I just said, well, I want to get my release. And I want to say, like, in 2009, I got my official release from Kumbia, from Sony. And I felt free. I was like, man, what do I do now? And that's when TuneCore was the thing, you know, iTunes. It wasn't Apple yet. It was just iTunes and TuneCore or whatever, or just iTunes. And they were just telling me, put out some music through iTunes. And I'm like, but how do you do that?
Yeah.
You know, and I started learning all that stuff. And so eventually I had to learn all of that on my own and figure out how to continue, you know, moving forward. But I didn't know, man. You know?
Would you say that feeling whenever you went independent was similar to the feeling that you had whenever you got fired? Was there like a parallel, or was it a little bit different now that you had evolved and you had
It was a little bit different
because you had a brand now. Now that you're an established name, you know, it's new territory, but nonetheless, you had some skin in the game now because you had Frankie J equity, which, you know, prior to that with the Kumbia Kings, you were still Cisco. Now you've become Frankie J. But you know, one thing I want to state, you know, you mentioned Colombia, feeling that you didn't have a record there, or they didn't feel that any of these were hits. These are the same guys that told you that Sugar Sugar wasn't
correct.
A hit. So I just want to make that very clear in this interview that clearly,
at the time,
clearly somebody was disconnected.
For sure.
Funny, I don't know if I've ever told you this. I need you to clarify this on the podcast. So the gentleman that sold me the show, the very first show that I had ever booked you for, which he hustled me, right?
Yeah.
Let's not forget that. The way he sold me on that is like, you gotta book Frankie right now. He has this big record coming out. Which
one?
He said you had a record with Janet Jackson.
Really?
Is that a lie or is that?
Oh my God, that's a total lie.
Oh my God.
Oh, he got you on that one, bro.
I was like,
he took your money so cold with that one, dude.
That's what closed the deal. I was like, boy, he got a record with Janet Jackson. I was like, here's the money. So if anybody ever wants to hustle anybody, drop the Jackson name. That'll get it done right there. You know?
Oh man. Oh, he hustled you on that one.
I was ready for you to be like, actually,
it would have been dope to do a record with. I mean, hey, with Janet.
Let's speak it into existence.
I mean, come on, man. It would have been so dope to do something with Janet.
I mean, we can laugh about it now, but I swear he told me you had a record with Janet Jackson, and I just remember being like, when is this record coming out?
I sure it wasn't Freddie Jackson.
That's hilarious.
No, but you know what? I got to say that it was tough, I think, when I was signed with Kumbia, because it was really tough for them to try to figure me out as an artist, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I had to really, really take, you know, initiative to show them who I was. And at the time, also with my manager, man, like he struggled to try to get them to understand me as an artist. I remember coming out with the album The One, and my album was on the Latin department, you know, on like go to FYE, you know, what's the big old FYE in Manhattan, and where all the artists would go and do like the in-stores. I remember walking to the store. Come on, let's go to the store. I want to go check out, you know, the album is finally out, you know. And I'm like, why is it on the Latin side? This is an English record. And I'm like, yeah, I'm Mexican, but why are you putting this album on the Latino side? Like, it should be on the English side, where Neo is at, where the Chris Browns are at, and where Usher is at, and Justin Timberlake is at, you know? And it was tough for them to, you know, to market me. So we had to take it upon ourselves to say, nah, this is who Frankie is. This is Frankie J. Like, this is not, he's not like this. Yeah, yes, he sings Spanish. Yes, he can write Spanish, but this is what we're promoting right now. It's an English record that just so happens to have obsession with some Spanglish. And I remember we had Don't Want to Try in Spanish
I was about to
as
say
well.
That, man. You beat me to it, man. I remember that version.
You know, it's we added those records on the album The One because we wanted to reintroduce them to my fans and to let them know, hey, look, this is Frankie J also sings these records, you know. And but yeah, it was tough, man. There was always a battle there, you know. It's
interesting you say that because let's fast forward 2023. Right now, being Latin is the wave. It is absolutely the wave. The last 2 years, the most streamed artists are Latino, right? You know, from Bad Bunny on down.
On the urban side. On the urban side.
That is true. Okay, you're right.
Yeah.
But, you know, I will say this, like right now, Peso Pluma's currently having a moment, and I actually was on the phone with somebody at Capitol Records. Somebody at Capitol Records had inquired about Louis, actually. So he had called me, and he was like, hey, man, can I ask you a question? And he had asked me specifically about, you know, Peso Pluma, like, why you're Mexican, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm Mexican. Why? He's like, why is Peso Pluma having a moment right now? Like, why is he as big as he is? And I gave him my perspective, right? But within the context of this, I want to say this, and I want to make it very clear, and I want to know if you agree with this perspective.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago, I linked up with the Dallas Mavericks. I put something together for them for Hispanic Heritage Night.
Mm-hmm.
So I brought Chris Bettis out, and I let them know in advance, hey, I'm going to have Chris do the national anthem. This is what's going to happen. Let's accommodate him. So the Dallas Mavericks said, yeah, you can do the national anthem. Great. Everybody's excited. But they did not make those little accommodations that I mentioned, which was, I hate to put them out like this, but all I asked was give them courtside seats. Because
For sure.
if you put them in the crowd, it's going to be a zoo.
Yeah.
And they didn't listen. I mean, look, dude, we couldn't even get to his seats to almost halftime. But by the time we get to his seats, exactly what I told him was going to happen happened. It was like the scene in the movie where she's at the department store.
Yeah,
Everybody comes
sure.
in. Anyways, I say that to say, as we were leaving, I was like, hey, we got to leave. We weren't even up there for 2 minutes, and it became just fandom at its highest. They text me as we're leaving. They're like, come back, please. We want to make this right. But I had already given them in advance this was what was going to happen. And it dawned on me, and I don't mean no disrespect by this, right? But I want people to hear what I'm about to say. In that moment, I realized that nobody in the office that reached out to me from the Dallas Mavericks was Latino, right? And so here they're putting
then
together.
There's the disconnect.
So here's the Hispanic Heritage Night, which all they really did was copy and paste Taco Cabana color schemes and say, here's Hispanic Heritage Night. Everybody come out. But they didn't make the proper accommodations. I think there's so many parallels between them and the record labels. The reason why I say that is because you're right. There is the disconnect. How can people that are not from our culture try to market our culture to the culture, right? And they don't understand the language. So if I'm telling them, hey, Chris is a big deal, Baby Bash is a big deal, Frankie J is a big deal, they're not from our culture, so they may not know. Of course, we want to believe that the world knows everything, but the world doesn't know everything, and we give them too much credit. I feel like labels are very similar in the sense that in order for them to truly understand how to market the music, to truly understand how to, put the music out there, there has to be someone that looks like us or understands us that knows that. And I think maybe at Kumbia, that may have been the case. And not only with them, dude, really, to this day, I think that that's still the thing.
I agree 100% with you. I think that there's got to be someone there that looks like us to understand what we are and what we represent to our culture, and someone that is going to get it.
Correct.
And I think that needs to be there. It needs to be present, and they need to assign you to someone that knows your background.
Correct.
Because if not, there's a big disconnection there. There's a super big disconnect. But I mean, again, it's a team effort, right? It's teamwork. But if they want you to do the work that you got to do, like, they also have to do their own research and work themselves so that everything works the way it's supposed to, But there has to be a connection there, and if there isn't, then it can become a disaster.
Absolutely. And the voice has to be respected, because what I didn't say was, when he asked me, again, I want your opinion on this. He says, why is Peso Pluma having a moment, right? In your opinion, you being Mexican. I said, well, I mean, in my opinion, I said, for one, he looks like the young kids. And so there's a lot of young Hispanic kids that look just like this guy. So they identify themselves within this person, no different than the way I identified with Frankie J when Frankie J was having that run, right? And I'm seeing this, but then I tell the guy, I said, but think about this. These guys that are blowing up on the Latin side, right? Specifically, Bad Bunny, Santa Fe Clan, Peso Pluma. These guys are getting discovered in their homeland. They're not getting discovered in the States. And the reason why they're able to have an effective touring career right now is because there's so many of us in the States now that are being able to spread their music amongst all the community, all the Latinos across the U.S. I go, so unless you have somebody that can identify that talent within the States, you're going to continue to getting guys from outside that are going to have that. No different than an American artist being able to turn Europe, right? So that's kind of what I gave them. But anyways, neither here nor there. I think that that's kind of been the ongoing struggle for so many years, and I've never really necessarily looked at you as a Latin R&B singer. I've never
Right.
felt that way because when I first heard "Don't Want to Try," and really a lot of your records, "More Than Words,"
Yeah.
"Daddy's Little Girl," like I can tell personally that you were, I hear a lot of influences.
Yeah.
I hear Boyz II Men in what you do. I hear, man, a little bit of Jodeci there. Like
Yeah.
I know you've told me that As Yet was one of the first records that you sung.
Yeah.
I mean,
As Yet was definitely a group that I listened to a lot in the 90s. Obviously, Jodeci, you named it. Boyz II Men, absolutely. Babyface,
Babyface.
Joe.
Babyface, for sure.
Definitely a lot of Drew Hill, Jagged Edge, 112. So these are groups that I grew up with. And right now on the urban side, with Latinos, it wasn't big back then.
Yeah.
It was not.
It was foreign.
I think when myself and when Bash came into the picture on the urban side, we opened that door for reggaeton to come in, because the urban started accepting us, being the fact that we were Latinos, right? Coming into this whole new world of urban pop, R&B, hip hop, so to speak. And then because if I remember correctly, in 2003, and I remember because I went to Puerto Rico. I was invited to one of Don Omar's concerts in Puerto Rico. I'd never been. I've been to Puerto Rico, but I'd never been to the island and actually went and did a concert with the raza there. And Don Omar invited me to be a part of his concert. And this was in the very beginning of 2003. Don't Want to Try was already a big record in the United States, right here. And it was opening doors, man, for like on the urban side. It was becoming more apparent. And then that's when the whole reggaeton movement came in. And this was in 2004 when Daddy Yankee came in with Gasolina, I believe it was. And and we were going just hard, and crazy in the United States on the urban side with, myself, with Bash, with Daddy Yankee, and then with the cats from New York, Nore, also Nina Sky.
I remember that.
And we were doing shows together. We were all doing some shows together, and it was fun, man. It was great. But honestly, man, I think we were kind of one of those few that kind of paved the way for a lot of these guys and girls that are doing big things right now with the urban side on the reggaeton side.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, I mean, look, dude,
I'm not afraid to say it. I'm gonna tell it like it is, man.
Dude,
I was right there.
I hear it. No, that's what I'm saying. Even with right now,
and there's nothing about pride, nothing about ego. It's just what we lived.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, I mentioned Louis, the singer, at the top of the conversation right now. He's having a moment. He's starting to have his
for
run.
him. Yeah.
And I mean, I know this because I know him his whole life for the most part. There's a lot of you there,
For sure.
and I mean,
influence.
I mean, that's what I mean. Like influence, maybe not stylistic now, but I mean, you were an example. You were
and he's mentioned it to me.
Yeah,
he's told me. I think I got one of the biggest hugs that I've ever gotten from Louis, man. This was back in like 06, 07, or whenever I got the chance to meet him the first time. He was little, man. I remember he gave me a big old hug and he was like, "Oh man, I love you." And I was just like, "What the heck is this kid?" But he's very passionate, and he's had his struggles. And he's done some really, really good things. And here he is now having his moment, like you said. And I'm happy for him because, it shows that he really wanted it. Yeah. He worked hard and, he was working with playing skills too. But unfortunately, nothing really happened at that time. Now he found his niche. And here he is, spreading his wings, man. And he's doing good for himself.
And bringing it all the way back. You were never an asshole. And here we are, you know what I'm saying? Like, that like you got to be careful how you treat some of these guys on the way
Yeah.
when they're here, because one day they might be here and then
Yeah.
eventually here, and the fact that you've maintained a good relationship, I mean, it's so dope. Look, Frankie, I don't want to cut this conversation short. I can hear Andy's stomach rumbling from over here.
We're gonna go
I
have
know
some
that
dinner.
I know he wants to eat barbecue because he's a barbecue connoisseur. I always like to take him to some of the spots around here. If we would have had enough time, I would have loved to take you, little Frankie, over there at Cooper's in Fort Worth, but there's always a next time. And I know
sure,
if we don't pause this conversation and stop it here, we'll go for another hour and change.
Oh, yeah.
Frankie, thank
We'll
you
keep
so
talking.
much for joining me, for sharing some of your story. I guarantee you we'll come back around, we'll do it again. But thank you, man. Thank you for your contributions to the music industry, for what you've done for myself, for what you've like I said, man, you know, you're a good dude, and I mean, dude, come on, man.
Well, I just gotta thank you, bro. I gotta thank you for continuously, you know, communicating with me throughout the years, for booking me, obviously here in your home of Dallas, Texas, out there in Fort Worth as well, and you know, for the genuine relationship, the friendship that we've had throughout the years.
Yeah, man,
it's always a you know, a breath of fresh air, man, when I'm able to have a great relationship with, you know, people in the industry. It's not a lot, you know, I can't really say, man, that I have a lot of, you know, a lot of great relationships with so many, you know, people in the industry. Only very few. And just, you know, very honored to be here with you, man, and to, you know, to talk and you know, just shoot the shit.
No, I mean, I appreciate it. Look, I actually have a photo of Frankie where you have your hand over my wife's stomach, right?
Oh.
Right, when she was pregnant with my daughter.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
You have, you know, the photo with your hand on her stomach.
Yeah.
Now my daughter's 13 years old. So I mean,
13 years later.
That just goes to show
Wow.
that shows how long we've been rolling with each other. And you know,
Sheesh.
so many things I would love to talk to you more about. But
Yeah.
look, we'll save it for the next time. This right here is Frankie J.
Yes, sir.
Y'all make sure to follow him at The Real Frankie J. One last thing.
Yeah.
What upcoming projects do you have? I need to know, because we didn't get a chance to talk about
Yeah.
what you're working on now. What do you have coming
Well, I
up?
have 2 albums that are coming out. I have an album called Canciones que Recuerdo, Part 2, Volume 2. Well, it's called Recuerdos, and it's full of nothing but boleros, rancheras, and pop baladas. The first one came out in 2020, which did very well for me, and I performed some of the songs, you know, at some of the shows. So I'm proud of this project. And then another album, I can't really tell you the title just yet, but it's another project of covers from the yacht rock days from the 80s. You name it, from Chicago, the Bee Gees, Guns N' Roses from the late 80s. Just some beautiful covers, man. And hopefully it'll be out by the end of this year, 2023. And I'm also getting ready to finally work and launch my son.
Awesome.
For his, you know, his music. And this kid has been in the studio more than me. He's been hogging up my freaking studio in San Diego way more than me. And you know, he's coming out with some, you know, some music himself. And now I'm actually getting to experience, you know, this kid doing his own thing. He's producing, he's writing, he's recording, he's engineering his own sessions, and now he's working with several other independent artists. So he's done some records for me, you know, already in the past, and I want him to continue doing some records for me, because I'm also going to be working on some new songwriting and getting some original songs done and recorded for myself. But this kid, he goes by Bautista. That's the last name. So he's calling himself Bauti, and you know, I'm proud of him. So be on the lookout for him. He's coming out.
Man, I can't wait, you know, and hopefully that kind of brings you back to those younger days too, you know, that eye of the tiger, as they say, you know, whenever you're back in the gym, you know, so it'll be good. But I'm excited to hear it. Like I said, to be continued. Maybe next time around we'll have him on the show as well,
man.
you know, and thank you so much, Frankie, for everything.
Appreciate
and
you, man.
Again, that is Frankie J. I'll make sure to follow him, and we're out.